Darth Bane was the Sith Lord, who started the famous Rule of Two, a rule of the Sith where there must be only one master and one apprentice. One master to embody power and an apprentice to crave it. After reading the amazing Darth Bane trilogy by Drew Karpyshyn, I couldn't help but wonder, what if Darth Bane trained Anakin Skywalker? Darth Bane lived 1000 years before the Jedi of the current era and trained his apprentice, Darth Zana, with the hope she would one day surpass him in strength and challenge him in a duel for the mantle of Dark Lord of the Sith. The eventual duel happened between the two, and Bane attempted to use essence transfer on Zana to take over her body, but Zana's strength of will remained strong and defended against Bane's efforts. Because of Bane's essence transfer, he had to release his consciousness from his body, causing it to disappear, but because his consciousness was inhibited from entering Zana's mind, his spirit was sent into the void of the dark side, forever trapped on Ambria, where his essence transfer failed. Normally when essence transfer failed, the soul would remain trapped for the end of time, in a fate far worse than death. Bane's consciousness would remain in the stasis of the void for almost 1000 years. No one had visited the site in which Bane attempted the essence transfer, since it was secluded on Ambria. However, the site was visited by a Jedi researcher who was researching the site where the Sith supposedly went extinct 1000 years earlier, where Bane originally tricked the Jedi into believing the Sith went extinct. However, only tens of meters away was the site where Bane had attempted his essence transfer, and the Jedi researcher came into contact with Bane's soul trapped in stasis. Bane's soul immediately latched onto the Jedi, his mind taking over his body with ease, and after 1000 years, Bane had returned to the physical world. He looked at his new hands and instantly falls to his knees and vomits as his mind is overwhelmed with what has just happened. The last 1000 years have gone by in an instant, but it also felt like a millennia. Bane looked around as the sun shines deep on his face as he feels the force flowing through his new body. He reaches out with the force, attempting to peer at the state of the galaxy, wondering just how much time had gone past. Had it been months, years, decades? And he's thrust into a vision as he sees the Jedi Order still strong and over 10,000 members strong, clad in new robes inside their temple, which sits atop a Coruscant, which looks far different to how he remembered, and he starts to realize that maybe hundreds of years have passed. His vision changes as he sees the history of the Banite Sith, his own apprentice Zana training Darth Cognis, and Cognis eventually defeating her, and he watches this down his entire Sith lineage until he reaches Darth Plagueis and Darth Sidious, the Sith of the current era. You'd think Bane would be happy with the power that the Sith have risen to over this time, but rather his anger started to rise. He believes the Sith of this lineage have not been content with his vision. He wanted each apprentice to challenge the master for the title of the Dark Lord of the Sith. However, many of them have failed to do this directly and have sought to kill their masters by any means necessary, and some were successful, even though they were not stronger than their master, a direct contradiction to the Rule of Two and Bane's philosophy. He also saw many Sith who set their order back, Darth Gravid, Darth Victivus, and Darth Tenebris, and his flawed views on the Force, believing the Force to be calculated and analyzed, and other Sith from later generations that started to care about wealth and status, things Bane only saw as a means to an end. His final goal of the Jedi's genocide. Bane travels to the local library on Ambria and does some more in-depth research on the last 1000 years and comes up to date with the events that have transpired. His Sith lineage is strong, however, the Jedi still live. He finds no evidence of the Sith in the library, so knows the Sith must have remained hidden during the last 1000 years from the Jedi. He falls into another vision of the current Sith of this era, Darth Plagueis and Darth Sidious, and could sense they were extremely strong in the Force, definitely stronger than him in his current state. However, he would have thought, after 1000 years of his lineage, that they would be far stronger than their current strength, which only angered him that this is due to a few Sith in his lineage steering away from his philosophy. His disappointment turned into anger, as Bane had a realization that maybe he was wrong in his philosophy. Maybe the greed of the Sith is too much. No, he couldn't believe this. His philosophy had brought the Sith this far, and they were on the verge of defeating the Jedi, and it would be the two Sith he sees in this vision who would do it. In this vision, the Sith were on the Lee Merge Tower on Coruscant, and Bane decides he wants to get a look at them himself. He steals a ship from one of Ambria's ports and travels to Coruscant immediately. He descends the planet's atmosphere at night, whilst cloaking his presence in the Force. He lands his ship atop a building 200 meters away from the Lee Merge building and gets out his binoculars to watch the Sith. He sees Sidious talking with a Dathomirian, who he did not know, whilst Darth Plagueis was hiding close by, listening to every word. Sidious is giving more commands, and the Dathomirian quickly leaves, and Bane decides he will follow. Maul is of course being sent to Naboo to kill the Jedi and take Anakin Skywalker for himself, and Bane follows up and watches the events from the shadows. He hides around the corner of the Naboo ship hangar as the Queen and the Jedi arrive, but what caught Bane's interest the most was the boy present there with the Jedi. He could sense this boy was extremely strong in the Force, stronger than himself, Xana, Lord Khan, or anyone he's ever seen, and wondered if this was the reason that Maul was sent. But Bane realizes Anakin gives him an opportunity. With Anakin, it gives Bane an opportunity to restart his rule of two in his own ways, that if he trains Anakin up to his full potential, he could not just train Anakin to surpass him, but with his potential power, he might become the end of the Sith line. He must have the boy for himself. He watches as Maul reveals himself and engages the Jedi in battle, and realizes the time to pounce is now. Bane joins the fight, uses the Force to steal Obi-Wan's lightsaber from him, and cuts him down, as Qui-Gon turns around in shock, and Maul capitalizes, and strikes his blade directly through Qui-Gon. Now Maul and Bane stand opposite each other, as Bane stops hiding his presence in the Force, and reveals his full power to Maul, who is no doubt weaker. Maul quivers, hoping Bane won't attack, but he was wrong. Bane advances, unleashing the fury of 1,000 years of built-up anger, and overwhelms the Sith warrior, cutting him down for his defiance of the rule of two. Once Anakin returns, Bane takes him for himself, and together, they travel to Sertric 4, the site of Darth Bane's old residence. However, that night was when Darth Plagueis was killed by Darth Sidious, and Bane got a vision of the encounter through the Force, how Palpatine attacked Plagueis with Force lightning as he was asleep, eventually killing him. This enraged Bane, watching Sidious kill his master in clear defiance of the rule of two, only motivating him more to start anew. After Bane took Anakin, he had an important job, to turn the boy to the dark side philosophy. Anakin questioned who he was, where Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan had gone, but Bane told him that they had died, and he had come in their stead to train him. Anakin questioned whether Bane was a Jedi, who told the boy he was not, but a part of another sect of Force users, the mortal enemies of the Jedi, the Sith. Anakin had reservations about this, but this was where Bane started his manipulation, telling Anakin that the Jedi are not good people, that they've done nothing for him and his mother his entire life. If they were the true protectors of the galaxy, then they would have freed them from slavery. If the Jedi are the guardians of the galaxy, why do they ignore the slaves of Tatooine, simply because it occurs outside the Republic? Bane then tells Anakin the story of when he was growing up as an impoverished miner on the planet Arpatros, living in inhumane conditions, forced to work extreme hours just to survive, and essentially was a slave. Yet the Jedi did nothing to help him, and he had to take matters into his own hands and sought power for himself, power to change his circumstances and decide how he lived his life. It is this power he offers Anakin, who decides to accept Bane. Bane travels around the Outer Rim, showing him the rest of the atrocities around the galaxy that the Jedi ignore, only strengthening his position. Anakin's training began, and Bane started teaching him about the dark side. He starts with the Sith overall philosophy, as well as the rule of two, and how he's training Anakin to become stronger than him, so that one day he will challenge him to become the Sith Master. Bane teaches Anakin the depths of knowledge that he learned from Revan and Frida Nad's holocrons, and the Sith rituals, spells, and alchemy that were inside of them. Bane discovered early on that Anakin's immense Force potential meant that he had the talent for Sith alchemy, something that he himself did not, and Anakin learned many spells and rituals, and practiced these heavily. He also learned standard Force techniques, Force choke, telekinesis, mind control, and became a master of these very quickly. Bane didn't equip Anakin with a lightsaber for his first 3 years of training, as he wanted him to be connected with the dark side and have an unbroken connection to the Force before focusing on physical combat. But he would become proficient with a lightsaber and his power was growing extremely fast, and Bane knew that in time, Anakin would have little need for his lightsaber, as his force powers would dominate most opponents with ease. Darth Bane was the perfect teacher for any student of the Force. This is because he genuinely wanted his apprentice to become stronger than him, and thus would not hold back in his training in any way, and taught him everything he knew. For the 10 years whilst Bane was training Anakin, he left Sidious alone as the sole Sith Lord, and let him carry out his own plans, because he knew in time, his and Anakin's power would be too much for him. Sidious had wondered what happened to Maul, and concluded that one of the Jedi must have killed him, but then he would have injured either Obi-Wan or Qui-Gon significantly, to the point where they could not survive their injuries. But what really happened was far more sinister. Bane built his own network of spies, connections, and contacts during this time around every corner of the galaxy, so he could have a connection and earful into what was happening all around the galaxy. Bane also continued his own training and studies during this time, as he planned for himself to challenge Sidious for the mantle of Dark Lord of the Sith, and to do this, he must grow stronger. 10 long years pass, and Anakin's training is complete, and Bane dubbed him the title of Darth Invictus, the Undefeated, which represented Anakin's raw power and intensity. During this time, Palpatine and Dooku had been setting up the Separatist crisis, and successfully declared war on the Republic, and he started the Clone War. And Bane knew that it was finally time for himself to challenge Sidious. He sent an encrypted message to the Chancellor, whom he knew was Sidious through his visions, and spoke to Sidious in the ancient Sith language, something only he would understand, and sent through a time and date to meet on Korriban. Bane knew Sidious would take the bait. He simply would not be able to resist. His arrogance for his own power too much. And Sidious was caught, extremely curious, who knew of the ancient Sith language, and wondered whether they would be a friend or foe. Anakin and Bane waited on Korriban at the set time as a ship descended, carrying both Dooku and Palpatine. They both exit their ship as confusion takes over Palpatine. He can sense these two are extremely strong in the dark side, and wonders how they've remained hidden for so long. Palpatine asks Bane who they are, who states his name, Darth Bane, with his apprentice, Darth Invictus, previously known as Anakin Skywalker. Palpatine stops in his tracks. Darth Bane, the originator of the Rule of Two, could it really be? And Anakin Skywalker, the boy labeled the Chosen One, who went missing 10 years ago. It might actually be him. If this really is Darth Bane, and he's trained Anakin Skywalker, then he has a serious problem. He asks Bane how this is possible, that he read of his defeat to Darth Xana 1000 years ago, and Bane tells Sidious it is true. However, the Force has granted him a second chance to correct the Rule of Two and steer the Sith back on the correct path, and this involves taking over the Sith's grand plans for himself. That's not what Palpatine wanted to hear. He's so close to his endgame. The last thing he needs is this challenge. Bane speaks up and states how he challenges Sidious for the mantle of Dark Lord of the Sith. Palpatine had no choice but to accept. He cannot flee here, and tells Bane that only the strongest shall win, and Bane doesn't wish for anything else. Palpatine tries to get off an early strike of Force lightning, but Bane dodges and ignites his lightsaber, and Palpatine does the same. These two are on a similar level of power, and thus a battle of the blades is necessary. Bane advances, using his raw physical power and masteries of the Force to advance, but Palpatine is by no means on the back foot. Their movements were so fast that no bystander could follow the action. They both had an extreme mastery of the lightsaber and attacked with a ferocious intensity. They both attempted to blast Sith lightning at each other, however blocked each other's strikes through the quick conjuring of a Force shield. Palpatine could sense Bane was superior with a blade and tried to implement his alchemy in battle, conjuring Sith spawn to aid him in the battle, beasts that would attack Bane at the same time as him, attempting to put him on the back foot. But Bane was superior against multiple attackers, using wide sweeping strikes to keep his opponent at bay and preventing himself from being surrounded. He maintained control over the battlefield, slowly manipulating the position of his adversaries to isolating Palpatine. With a quick move, he cut down all the Sith spawn, and used the darkside energy released from the deaths to power a blast of Sith lightning that Palpatine could not defend with his own blade. It connected with his skin, scorching the outer layers as he screamed in pain. Bane moved instantly, rushing forward with the power of the Force, and cut right through Palpatine with his lightsaber, and ended the Sith Lord's life. Bane stood over Palpatine's body, victorious, as he had once again claimed the mantle of Dark Lord of the Sith. Anakin smiled, and they both turned to Dooku, who had a look of fear on his face, but Bane told him not to worry, that they still have use for Dooku, that he will remain in his position as head of the Separatists and continue the war. However, they will change Palpatine's strategy. Hey guys, today is our Cyber Monday sale over at Fantasy Sabers, where with each order, we're giving away a free mystery saber. Any saber from our collection chosen at random. There's also up to 50% off store-wide and free international shipping. Check out our NeoPixel replicas, as well as an extensive Padawan NeoPixel range. First link in the description, now back to the video. Bane had decided that he will defeat the Republic and Jedi through all-out warfare. Palpatine had held the Separatists back, since their capabilities of droid manufacturing far exceeded what was released upon the galaxy. This is due to Palpatine wanting to prolong the war for as long as possible, but Bane doesn't want to do that. He bolsters the Separatist forces, releasing billions more battle droids into the Clone War, and slowly through this, they begin to overwhelm the Republic. This forced the Jedi Order to release more Jedi into battle, and slowly the Jedi Temple was becoming deserted, as all of their members were in the fight around the galaxy. This included Jedi that didn't usually fight, including healers, scholars, and other factions within the Order, into battle, who were less skilled and inexperienced for battle. This worried the Senate and Jedi Order severely, as they were notably losing the war and had to change tactics soon. As a result, Jedi casualties increased significantly, and Anakin and Bane's own personal kill count increased. Anakin's power was developing fast, and he really had to use a lightsaber in battle, as often his force powers alone were enough to overpower the Jedi. He could crack the necks of all Padawans and younglings with ease, and even some knights, as his superior connection to the Force was unmatched. When dealing with masters, he would employ more of his Sith alchemy, and really would require his blade to finish the job. Bane was happy with this. Anakin's development was exactly what he expected. They dragged the Clone War on for 5 more years, for multiple reasons. A, to increase Anakin's power and development, and B, it gave them more opportunity to wipe out the Jedi slowly, since they couldn't use Order 66. During this time, Bane didn't treat Dooku like a Sith at all, since his acknowledgement would denounce Bane's rule of 2, and he only saw him as a pawn, a means to an end, and would not train him further. Dooku initially agreed to align himself with Bane, as he also sought to destroy the Jedi and take over the Republic, something Dooku wanted to do. But slowly, as the war continued, he started to doubt Bane's intentions, and he wondered whether he would be able to impose his vision upon the galaxy. However, Dooku was too deep now to change anything, as his power was incomparable to both Anakin and Bane, and had no choice but to remain in his position. Thousands of Jedi have died at this point, and Bane now feels the Sith victory is assured, especially with Anakin by his side. Skywalker's power eclipsed him years ago, and he has been waiting for his apprentice to challenge him at any moment. A challenge he knows he will likely not win, and concludes that Anakin must be waiting for the end of the war, something Bane is content with. Bane wants himself and Anakin to challenge Yoda and Windu directly, the strongest of the Jedi against the strongest of the Sith, to test whether they really are the most powerful. But he also knows defeating them will signify the Order's defeat to the rest of the Jedi. Bane carefully engineers a Separatist invasion on Kashyyyk, where Windu was located, and increases the intensity of the campaign, where the Council would send Yoda to assist in the battle. This is exactly what Bane planned, and during the main battle, Anakin and himself joined to face Yoda and Windu in a duel. The Jedi stood opposite the Sith, realizing they had been tricked, as they all ignited their lightsabers, except Anakin, who started conjuring up their assistance in battle. Instantly he conjured up shadowed figures with swords as they emerged and surrounded them all. As Anakin commanded them to attack the Jedi and aside Bane, they did just this. The Jedi had to defend against Bane, as well as the shadowed conjures of Anakin's power, and they were on the back foot. But Windu was slowly taking them out, one by one. But this was only the first stage of Anakin's plan. Windu's Vapor slowly increased his power in battle, feeding off the dark side energy coming from Anakin and Bane. But Skywalker had a counter for this. He unleashes a spell, Necro Mist, which is an alchemical fog that carries traces of Sith energy and the souls of those long dead that he captured from Coruscant. This spreads across the galaxy, causing Yoda and Windu to have hallucinations of fallen Sith warriors, who started to seep doubt into their minds about the Jedi's actions. It made them question their path, whether the choices they've made were correct, and ultimately tipped both the Jedi off balance. It lowered morale and disorientated them, the visions appearing so real that they hesitated in battle. And thus, Anakin ignited his blade and joined the fight, taking advantage of the Jedi's lapse in focus to cut down Windu first, and then converge upon Yoda, who finally broke free from Anakin's necro mist. However, it's too late, as Anakin and Bane were upon him, slashing their blades with unrelenting fury, and cut down the Grandmasters, as his last dying scream echoes throughout the Force and is felt by every Force user in the galaxy. They all knew Yoda had died, and this was the first step in the endgame of Bane's grand plan. In the weeks following, Bane and Anakin planned their final assault and eventually lead a huge armada of separatist forces against Coruscant, the capital of the Republic. Hundreds of Star Destroyers clashed in space, whilst Anakin and Bane led a huge army of battle droids on the ground surface, specifically towards the Jedi Temple. The Jedi defended the temple with their lives, but as Anakin and Bane entered the temple, the Jedi stood little hope. Anakin conjured a mass Sith spell as he attempted to touch the minds of all the Jedi in the temple. His attack began as a sharp pain in their skulls, like a hot knife, stabbing directly into their brains, before carving down to slice the two hemispheres in half. Many Jedi fell to their knees in pain, only to open their minds and see their vision was thick with swarms of flying horrors, beings with their wings torn and ragged, leather flaps of skin hanging from their exposed bone. Their bodies were small and malformed, and they each individually represented something from the Jedi's past that haunted their consciousness. Through this, the Jedi were distracted, and therefore the battle droids took action, shooting down countless Jedi as they made their way throughout the temple. And the Jedi Masters, who could somewhat defend against Anakin's attack, were cut down by Bane himself. However, halfway through the battle, Anakin and Bane felt a divergence in the Force. Force beings had arrived of immense power. Panic started to seep in as they collectively looked back at the entrance of the Jedi Temple to see three beings of immense power in the Force, the Father, the Son, and the Daughter, glide in and make their way towards Bane. Bane grouped up next to Anakin, and they both started building up the dark side within them as they feared who these beings could be. Could they be Jedi? No, they sensed the dark side from one of them. Could they be the Force itself? The Father states who he is and tells Anakin and Bane that their actions have destroyed the balance in the Force that he's in charge of keeping, and he's come to stop their tirade before it can conclude. Anakin knows this being is immensely strong and decides to attack before he does. Right before the Father makes his move, Anakin starts using Force Siphon, an ability that lets him drain the life force and energy directly from the Father, harnessing it to amplify his own powers temporarily. No other being could do this to the Father except Anakin. Bane realizes what's happening and focuses his energy onto Anakin, also boosting his power. Anakin starts to feel his power increase as his body begins to glow with a pulsating aura, and he's raised his power to the level of the Father. Anakin sends Force lightning towards the Father, but instead of its normal blue, it's a bright gold, and the Father is sent flying to the floor in pain as Anakin begins his onslaught. The Father is old, and his body cannot take this for much longer, as Anakin raises him into the air and cracks his neck with one strike as his body slumps to the ground, dead. The Son and the Daughter stare in shock and cannot believe what has happened. They take one look at each other, turn and run away, knowing if Anakin can do this to the Father, then they have no chance. But Anakin knows he will have to hunt them down in the future. Ultimately, the Jedi Order is decimated, and the Republic Senate is taken over by Bane, Anakin, and the Separatists. Over the coming weeks, they establish their rule and empire over the galaxy, as with the entirety of the droid army, there is no chance or hope of opposition. Key political leaders that may have the potential to oppose them in the future are executed, and they set up the new chain of command, with the Senate only existing to carry out orders, and the decision-making of the Empire will reside solely with Bane and Anakin. They expand their forces to every corner of the galaxy, and establish droid control to ensure every planet, every system is under their command. This ultimately takes months to do, and the time finally came, when Anakin visited Bane in the throne room of the former Jedi Temple, and challenged him for the mantle of Dark Lord of the Sith. Bane was overjoyed by this. The day he had dreamed of was finally upon them. Bane accepted the challenge, walked forward towards Anakin, and ignited his blade, expecting Anakin to do the same, but Skywalker simply stood there, his lightsaber nowhere to be found. Bane's eyebrow twitches in confusion as Anakin states that he no longer has any use for the crude weapon, as the Force itself will forever be enough. Anakin begins moving his hands as Bane prepares for the onslaught. Skywalker starts by casting 2 spells, one of which releases swarms of beetle-like creatures with a dark side venom that, when injected into an opponent, will muddle their thoughts and also disrupt one's connection to the Force. The other spell is labeled Hellfire, as Anakin conjures flames imbued with dark side energy as they begin falling from the ceiling and raining all over the battlefield, as well as Anakin being able to throw them from his fists. Bane had to focus. He uses his saber to slash at the beetles, whilst conjuring Force shields to block the flames. But he also takes some time to attack, slashing at Anakin, attempting to catch him off guard. But he was on point and too fast for Bane, either getting out of the way or firing back with his flames. Anakin could have used this to tire Bane out, as ultimately his 2 spells would have taken care of him eventually, as Anakin could attack from the side and dodge Bane's attacks easily. But this was not the way of the Sith. He started chanting again. This new spell he had learned from Frieden Nad's holocron, and this technique had not been mastered since the days of Exar Kun. He started summoning darkside golems made of stone, whose strength rivaled the strongest creatures in the galaxy. They rushed at Bane, who was already defensively at his maximum, and they crashed into him, knocking over his lightsaber, but also sent him to the ground. Bane attempted to get up, but the golems held him down, and he looked up to see Anakin approaching. He thanked Bane for his teachings, that the Sith wouldn't be where they are without him, but now due to the rule of 2, he must die. Bane accepts his death, as to beg for mercy on the brink of death is not the Sith way. He welcomed it, as Anakin used Force Siphon and drained 100% of Bane's life force from his body, as he slumped to the ground, and finally after 1,000 years, Darth Bane faced his true death, and his philosophy of the Sith was one that would never be forgotten. The Empire was Anakin's, he had earned it, and the Sith may indeed rule the galaxy under his rule forever. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to check out What If Darth Tenebrous Trained Anakin Skywalker and What If Darth Plagueis Trained Anakin Skywalker. Don't forget to check out our insane Black Friday deal, where we're giving away a free mystery saber with every order. The link is in the description, and may the Force be with you.